this round. We look at the 2-2 Boogie Woogie Sheep in sixth place, taking on the high-flying East Quiche in 3-2 in second place, and really could be easily 4-1, but they do have a very healthy percentage, the Quiche. We'll have a look at the Boogie Woogie Sheep's team, and they've had some really surprising type of performances of late, with Moore kicking his 3 goals last week, Rioli and Rosie's 3 goals, bobbing up for 3. That was awesome. A really highlight there for the Sheep side. And West as well, kicking a couple of goals, and he's been getting on the scoreboard a fair bit this season. Waterman looks like a really nice pick for them, and he's one of the only few West Coast players to be performing. They do lose, though, Frederick to injury and have McCreary from the Pies on a bye. We look at the Quiche team, and they have got, Bolton, who kicked 4 goals last week. Sam Darcy, he's come in the past few weeks and he kicked 3, as well as Fritsch, who kicks his goals in real quick time. Even when the Quiche side looks down, he all of a sudden gets some really quick goals. And then you had Hardwick, who, what a move, moves up forward last week and kicks 4 goals in probably one of the performances of the season. I was really impressed by that. And Harrison Petty, he goes to the back line a fair bit, but then when he goes up forward, he kicks goals in quick time, and he's another weapon for the Quiche as he hits the scoreboard. But they do lose this week Heaney, McGuinness, Hill and Lipinski in their bye, so there's a few outs there for the Quiche. But in saying that, it's going to be, a battle of the small forwards this week. There's some really good small forwards in this matchup here, small to mid-sized forwards. I think Quiche will continue his winning streak and will defeat the Boogie Woogie Sheep in a high-scoring affair, something like 130 to 114, so a 16-point win to the Quiche. It's going to be I think it's going to be, one of those games that it's a bit of an 8-pointer between the 2-2 Bulls in 8th spot and the 3-2 Pirates in 5th spot with a pretty mediocre percentage. It's a real big game for these two teams. We'll look at the Pirates team, and I can see that Burn Jones has been an impressive selection. He's kicking goals most weeks. He bobbed up for 3 last week and looked really on for the Pirates, but they unfortunately do lose Finlayson with his verbal indiscretion. That's going to cost him 3 weeks, so that's a massive loss for the Pirates. Tex probably needs to get his kicking boots back on, and I think the Pirates really do rely on him to, get the team off to a good start most weeks. So he's going to really need to convert some goals. But they do actually gain Pal Pepper, who has served his 4-game suspension. So we expect him to give the side some spark. They were a bit flat last week. And they also do lose McInerney to his bye, but also Bruce, I think, will miss again through injury. At the Bulls side of things, they've got Jesse Hogan, who's been the premium forward of the season, bobbing up with 4 last week. Riccardi also kicks goals quite frequently. And Noah Long kicked 1 goal 3 last week, so he was a bit inaccurate, but it looks like, he's hitting the scoreboard and putting some pressure on other teams. So I think I'm looking for Noah Long to kick, a couple goals again this week. Petruccelli also to kick 2 or 3 goals. He's been a nice selection for them, as the Bulls have DeGoey on a bye. So my prediction this week, I think, I'm actually going to go for the Bulls this week. I think they'll probably squash the Pirates quite easily by 35 points. I just think the Finlayson loss is just too big, and they've got some players a little bit out of form. So Bulls by 35. We move on to our third matchup for this round, and it's the 3-2 Goalfest in 4th place against the South East Scorpions, who are 3-1 in 3rd place. So should be a really good game, this one. Both teams are pretty determined when they face up against each other. It's going to be a really close game. We look at the South East Scorpions team. They do have Crisp on a bye this week, and unfortunately have lost Cozzy Pickett for 1 week for his really silly hit last week. It's just really unnecessary, so that's a bit frustrating there. Charlie Cameron, I think he may have only kicked the 2 goals last week against a North Melbourne side where he could have really beat up on them, but I expect him to kick 2 or 3 this week. Van Ruin, he's been okay, but we probably expect more from him. He was, though, goalless the last time these two teams met when Brisbane faced off against the D's, so I'm not sure how he will go. And Jamie Cripps has been a really busy player so far for the Scorpions. I'm expecting him to, maybe kick possibly 3 or 4 goals on Sunday against Richmond. I think he's been a really nice selection there. And Max King and Tabiner from Freo, both really handy players, big players, have got goals in them, but both have tough matchups this week. We look at the Goalfest team. Toby Green finally returned to some form last week with his 5 goals. Apart from that, though, they do lose Logan McDonald with his bye, so he's a bit of a loss for them, and also have lost Perkins to injury. The Goalfest probably need to expect more from Membry, who's been quiet, as well as Daniels and Butler, both goalless last week. And Emmett looked great last week at kicking his first 2 goals of the season, so can he continue that form? Some really good questions to answer from both of these sides. But in terms of my selection this week, I do think the Scorpions are a little bit stronger. I think they've got more options and will win a close contest by 9 points. The Is Don Is Good side, who are 0-4, and they nearly got 100 points last week, so they have been quite competitive, facing up against a Scorching Stars side who are kicking lots of goals and are up top of the ladder with a very impressive 5-0 record. We look at the Scorching Stars side. Danaher, he was very prolific last week, kicking 5 goals, and expect him to kick another 2 or 3 this week in a little bit of a tougher matchup against the D's on Thursday Night Football. Callum Brown, he was impressive last week with 3, and a little bit of a surprise packet with Jade Gresham impressing with his 3 goals. We expect McCarthy and Petrarca to bounce back. We've had quietish weeks previously. I think they'll both hit the scoreboard tomorrow, and I'm expecting Todd Marshall as well to get more than the 1 goal that he kicked last week due to the suspension from Finlayson, so I think he will get some more opportunities at the sticks. We look at some buys, so thinking about buys this week, they are Collingwood or Sydney players, so if you have any of those players, they will miss. So the Stars have Mycheck and Elliott missing, as well as Warner. And when we look at the Is Donna's Good side, a couple of big outs with Amadi and Papley, so they're really big losses for them. But we look at Ben King playing the Hawks. I think there's some opportunities there for him to impress. Georgiades made his return last week, and I thought he was really promising, kicked a couple of goals. I thought he was great for them. And Kai Lohman was a real surprise packet last week also with 2 goals. So can he do that again this week? Unfortunately, Stringer and Bedford have been a little bit quiet in the past week. So they're going to need to really play well this week if they're going to keep the Stars or, try and challenge the Stars and get their first win for the season. But in saying that, the Stars, I think, will go 6-0 and win this one by 28 points, which is between the 2-3 Mongolian Mangoes up against the Doctors' Vengeance, who are 0-4, but I tell you what, this Vengeance side, they have looked a little bit more competitive, and I don't think they deserve to be 0-4. They are scoring, around that 80-point mark most weeks and could easily have had a win by now, so just a little bit unfortunate for them that they just haven't, their defence hasn't been strong enough, and, they haven't shored up the defence, the Vengeance, and have tried to focus on their attacking instincts, but are conceding too many goals. So for them, we're going to look at the Vengeance, and they've got Stengel and Henry who combined for 6 last week, and I expect them to do that again this week. I think Ben Brown's going to really need to lift as well. He was goalless last week, and he really needs some goals there for the Vengeance. Corey Durden and Brad Close also a couple of smallish forwards that the Vengeance will be relying upon. And I expect, I'm not sure whether or not Dangerfield or Rowan will play this week, but I think one of them may return, perhaps maybe Dangerfield from his hamstring. I think Rowan might be another week away. And for the buy side of things, there's a few Pies players out for the Vengeance, with Pendlebury also having some sore ribs. And we look at the Mongolian Mango side, they've got buys from Haywood and McLean, but I expect Harvey Thomas to be dropped. He was really quiet last week. I'm not sure he can hold his spot. Koziski, though, he really, he looked promising last week. He only kicked the 1 goal, but I expect him to impose himself against the Eagles. I think Amos has been great most weeks. I think he'll kick a couple. And Larkey, we expect him to get busy in Geelong, as well as Eddie Forward, who also looks like a really, a really astute pick for them. So for me, the Vengeance, unfortunately, I think a little bit too cat-reliant this week. I am tipping the Mangoes by 23 points. We now have a look at our BH Cup matchup this week with the SMS Fortress team taking on the Vital side in the BBQ comp. Both teams have lost Goulden this week to a bye, whilst Vital also has Darcy Cameron, Brody Grundy and Lockie Schultz having byes and will sit out, whilst the Fortress team will have Elliott also missing out and have lost Finlayson as well to his 3-game suspension, which is a bit unfortunate for them. We have a look at the Fortress team. They've got Rioli in some really good form. Expect him to continue that this week and get opportunities. Langford was a bit quiet last week. I think he may have gone goalless, so we really need him to return to some score, to put some scoreboard pressure on the Vital team. And can Danaher back up from his impressive 5-goal performance last week against the Roos, against a more formidable Demons outfit? Waterman, he's looking great. He's kicking, a couple of goals most weeks, so can he continue this form? Dan Butler's been pretty quiet, so can he get busier as well for the Fortress? I think they will need that small forward in particular to maybe have a bit of a day out. I don't know if he'll do that against the Giants, but he can easily kick a couple of goals if he's switched on. For the Vital team, they have got Ugle-Hagen, who looks threatening most weeks. Jack Higgins has been actually a really nice selection by them. He's quite threatening and really helping the team out. So I really like what Jack Higgins is doing. Harley Reid actually last week just looked really imposing in front of the goals. I think he played closer to goals last week, and I think he will have more confidence now because of that, and I expect him to kick a couple of goals. Eric Hipwood, he's a little bit of a hot and cold player. Kicked 3 goals last week. I don't know what he'll do against the Ds. I don't suspect he will be all too damaging. But Charlie Curnow is the one that I'm expecting a big game from. He is one of those players that dominates under the roof at Marvel, so I think he could kick maybe 4 or 5 goals. And with that in mind, my selection this week, I think it is the Curnow factor for Vital, and I think that's what will get them across the line for a 95 to 78 point game. So 95 to 78, it will be a 17-point win to Vital. Okay, so let's have a look at who's best with the Fest for the end of round 4, our gather round. At number 5 is a Saints player who inspired Vital to a tight victory against the Vengeance last week, and that is Jack Higgins. Kicked a couple of goals. They were really crucial. He's been doing that pretty consistently over the past few weeks, so he's number 5. In number 4, we have Shai Bolton with his 4 goals last week. Again, another small forward that's, really hitting the scoreboard hard, and making a massive impact. So he's at number 4, and I expect him again to kick maybe 3 goals this week against the Eagles on Sunday. At number 3 is Charlie Curnow, who also kicked 3 goals last week, and, he's a Marvel specialist, so returns there this week, and I think he will kick maybe 4 or 5 goals. So I'm expecting him to stay in that top 3 come this time next week. At number 2 is no surprise. It is Bailey Fritsch, again, kicking 3 goals, and 2 of them in real quick time. It really changed the game last week, and, he's having a massive season for the teams that have Bailey Fritsch. So he's number 2. And at number 1, and this is not really a shock, but it is Jesse Hogan, who booted 4 goals, getting a victory against Rubber Gloves. I think it was for Rocket Rod. And also, despite the Funky Bulls losing, Hogan has kept them very competitive and with their 2-2 scoreline. So Hogan is number 1. Let's see how many of these players are in the top 5 this time next week. I'd also like to say thanks everyone for your support listening to these podcasts. I hope you enjoy listening to them.